Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's virtual event, Beyond Generation, How to Build SEO Strategy with AI. I myself, I've brought a blank notebook here. I'm excited to take some notes and learn from the experts today. My name is Jonathan Gandalf. I'm founder and CEO of The Juice, a B2B content curation and distribution platform. I'm joining from, I'm actually hosting, this is the first time I've done this. I'm hosting a virtual event from an in-person event out in Tucson, Arizona. So I'm in a cowboy themed boardroom. So excited to giddy up and yeehaw through today's event. Before I introduce our experts on the panel today, just a few housekeeping items to take care of. First, Q&A. Please feel free to insert any questions you have throughout the event in the chat on the right, or there's also a Q&A section. Insert them in either place. We'll find them and address them. We have time saved at the end for Q&A. We might pepper the panelists today with those questions as they come in. If not, we'll certainly save time at the end to address those. The $1 million question, yes, this recording will be made available post-event. So that'll be available via The Juice and sent to you as a post-event email as well. The agenda today. So we're really excited to talk about all things AI. We're going to cover the kind of first topic of content generation. I think everyone is pretty familiar with that use case, and we'll certainly cover that. And then we'll take the conversation beyond content generation, talk about how to build strategy with AI specific to SEO. And we'll end the conversation talking about the future of AI and SEO. I will stop rambling there because you all are here to listen to the three experts that we have joining us. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Nathan, I'll kick it to you first.
Hey, thank you so much, Jonathan. Super excited to be here. My name is Nathan. I'm with Copy AI. As of yesterday, the head of content strategy. So that's a fun little change. And within minutes of making that change, I got an outreach message like that. So I'm prepping myself mentally for a lot more of those. Excited to be here, just learning about AI, talking about AI and its impact on SEO. So just thrilled to be here. Thanks, Jonathan.
Hey, everybody. My name's Juan. I'm from a company called Binder. We are the leaders in the digital asset management space, as recognized by G2 and most recently the Forrester Wave. We serve around 4,000 global customers, and I currently work in the global program office, which is a department that really helps us launch our cross-departmental integrated campaigns. And I've got quite a storied background with SEO, so I'm really keen to talk about this with you fellas today.
And I am Stephen Jeske, Senior Content Strategist at MarketMuse. We are an AI content strategy platform. We've been doing AI long before AI was even sexy.
We all refer to AI as sexy now, so that's a great jumping off point, Stephen. Well, so the title of today's event is Beyond Generation, but I do think it's worth maybe spending a little bit of time talking about content generation. That seems to be maybe the most prominent current use case for marketers is generating content with all of the new generative AI tools. So we actually talked backstage a little bit. I was going to maybe toss this to Nathan, and Nathan, I'm excited to hear your response to this. But Stephen, you mentioned you were doing AI before AI was sexy. Why don't you maybe talk about a little bit about kind of the pre-generative AI version of what you all were doing at MarketMuse and what generative AI has done to your strategy and specifically your SEO strategy since generative AI has become more prominent?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, AI is kind of like this catch-all phrase. And you know what? We use it much more as marketers than the real people, the engineers behind the machine, behind the scenes that are actually working to put all this stuff together. And so AI really, nowadays people think of AI as generative AI. That's really what they think. But, there's so many different other aspects. And, one of the things is, and this is where MarketMuse started, at least 8 years ago, if not more, when we were developing our patented modeling technology, our topic modeling technology. We had to learn how to read content, which is, we call that natural language processing, right? And natural language understanding to actually be able to understand content. But because before you can actually start, talking about things, you actually have to understand them. And so we were doing that a long time ago and analyzing documents to put together what we'd call topic models, or like a knowledge graph to understand what things you need to talk about when you're going to talk about a specific subject. And so that was long before generative AI came on the scene.
And then Nathan, maybe that's a good segue into you. I mean, Copy AI really one of the original players in the space as it pertains to using generative AI, creating content. How has that rise to kind of normalcy for marketers impacted what you all are doing at Copy AI?
Yeah, it's been super interesting because we kind of have two AI products on the generative AI. And actually, I've been using Market Muse for so long. I got one of those lifetime passes on AppSumo, best like investment ever. Back when I was doing all that AI stuff, it was great. And now that we have the generative component, Copy AI started as kind of a competitor to, let's say, other chat tools that would be like Chat GTP. So if you wanted to write a blog post or a content brief or something, you could do that, and it would help you with that task. It's evolved now to something very different. So we still do have that chat component, which is great. But it is more the workflows that help you automate processes. So if you wanted to take a content brief to a first draft or things like that. So we have shifted definitely from like generative AI for the task to generative AI for processes and strategy. So I'm excited to chat all about that. In terms of how marketers have received it, I've noticed, I don't know, 2023 was obviously that huge boom. I felt like there was a lot of backlash from writers who enjoyed the act of writing very much. It felt like this is taking the thing that I really love. It's taking it from my tasks. So I enjoy doing that. That was the biggest thing I got. Marketers who liked writing, but were really focused on like, no, we're writing to get a certain result for this company. They tended to be more open to it, and we are seeing them use AI more generatively. I think it's safe to say that we're seeing the ones doing it responsibly get good results, and we're seeing those spammers start to see the impacts go down, which I think makes sense. And we'll talk a whole bunch about why, but yeah, that'll be my soapbox for now.
Juan, how about your experience?
Yeah, like I just have to echo exactly what you guys are saying, in that AI is not really, it's not new. Like the generative AI is really just like thrust the whole conversation into like a really big hype cycle, and there's a lot of conversations about it. But I mean, from a binder point of view, we've been using it as well, like in our software since 2017 already. So it's absolutely not new for us. And then also, Nathan, on your point, that's exactly our philosophy at Binder as well. Like we, for us, it's really been a key strategic focus, something that we really want to differentiate ourselves on. And the best way to do that is to enhance human capabilities rather than trying to replace them. So that's definitely the mantra we're putting in the market is that we're here to enhance what you guys are doing. We're here to make your job a lot easier. We're not here to replace you. So I think that's definitely something that we've repeatedly been saying in the market too.
I love that perspective. I think, Nathan, you're right. There was maybe some fear, and maybe still is some fear initially when generative AI came out. And Juan, I think that's so good, the enhance versus replace. I think that's great perspective. So before we do literally go beyond content generation, because that is in the title of the event, let's maybe just rapid fire how you all are using generative AI or are not using generative AI in your day-to-day, and then we'll start talking strategy. Who wants to go first?
All right. So I guess, since everybody's being so polite here and waiting for everybody else, I'll just, jump in and say, you know what? I mean, I use it in so many different aspects. And one of the things that I do, and by the way, I'm just going to echo what everybody else has done. I firmly believe in keeping humans in the loop, right? When we're using AI, we cannot just allow it to dictate everything and just, push that easy button and throw out thousands of pages of content out to the internet, because eventually, like is happening now, you will end up suffering for that. So the way I use it is I do use it interactively. I use generative AI to help me in creating, obviously in creating content. I actually use it to almost like a sounding board, right? Because in addition to creating strategy, I also will create content myself. And so sometimes this is how I'm using it, because I work remotely, as a lot of people do nowadays anyways. And so it's not always that easy to bounce ideas around. So sometimes what I will do is I will use, a large language model to help me bounce around ideas and, help me think of things maybe differently than I would have. Sometimes it can be a drawback in the sense that large language models will give you very, generic responses unless you tailor it. But sometimes that's good. So sometimes I'll do things like, and this is more getting into the strategy portion of it. Sometimes I'll say, what I'm thinking about, I'm thinking about, writing some content for this particular ICP, ideal customer profile, right? And I'll say, okay, let's talk about this ideal customer profile first. And, tell me some of the pain points, right? So that I can target my content. And of course, they'll give me generic stuff, but in that case, it's great. I don't want to have to dig through, some of these customer conversations to come up with maybe some pain points that are too nuanced and apply to a specific customer, right? I want sometimes something that is more generic. So sometimes I can take advantage of that.
That's fascinating.
I think I'll just jump in here and say that that's such an interesting application of using it effectively as like a brainstorming sounding board. That's actually something I've never really thought of, but yeah, that's really genius. I think when it comes to Binder and how we use it, I mean, we obviously a fairly large like marketing organization. The business is, like, I think last time we checked was around 600 odd Binder employees. So for us, it's really about finding the relevant content streams, breaking those off, and really, using the AI to generate the content and really fleshing out that process and systematizing it so that we can really start kind of small and really make sure that we recognize the best way to get the time to value and like really endeavor to focus the AI on increasing our speed to market. So, instead of taking like a glossary page, for example, that would have previously taken a large amount of research. And I mean, the research is still happening and the human touch is still there, as I've already mentioned, but it's also about rapidly increasing the speed at which we can get a first draft up and then get that human touch on it afterwards. And I think that that's the kind of thing that we are using AI for at the moment. And it's actually been really successful in allowing us to scale our content production, and also without like introducing additional headcount, basically.
Yeah, I am absolutely shameless in my use of generative AI throughout the day. Personal use, professional use, all of it. It's great. It's just become the go-to, like we've been saying, just in terms of a brainstorming buddy. In fact, it's caused fights in my home with my wife, because now sometimes we'll be talking and I'll get a question. I'll be like, have you even asked chat yet? Have you even gone to chat yet? Which I used to do with Google, but now it's like, it's just becoming the instinct. In terms of content generation, where we use it, I mean, almost at every area. We'll share later about prepping strategy with it. I have been using workflows, and what I try to do is just get, like Juan, you were saying, that first draft. If I could get that first draft like 80% of the way there, and then I go in with a fine-tooth comb and I start really making it, take it to that 100 really well, that I'm happy with it, more than happy to do that. So we've got some workflows that I made that do stuff like just add internal links for me, so I don't have to go do that. And it has a list of internal links I want it to add. I'll take it to a tool like MarketMuse to see which related keywords might help this stronger, or am I missing sections or different things, and then have generative AI. What I don't do is have generative AI go and then hit publish without looking at it. That's just something that never happens, and I need to be very clear about that. So I use it in everything. Move away from the content and SEO strategy, just your personal life strategy. On Sunday nights, I go in and I have a list of tasks and how long those tasks take me. And I say, this week, I need to accomplish X, Y, and Z. Help me create a weekly schedule. These are the hours I'll be working. These are the meetings I have. And then it makes me a weekly schedule that I can go hour by hour and really crank those tasks off, almost like accountability. So I use it to manage my own time too, and it's very effective. I hate to admit it, but it's just smarter than I am. It just is. So I leverage it for everywhere I can.
And that's a pretty high bar, Nathan. So that's impressive. That's cool. So the themes I heard there is, I think sometimes using generative AI to find the generic, or Steven, I loved your idea of like, kind of like, sometimes we dig and we find like anecdotes that we really hook onto, but sometimes we need that more broad perspective, and generative AI can help with that. One, I love the speed, the time to value. I think that's really smart. And then getting that draft to the human touch faster, I think, is so smart. Obviously, brainstorming and drafting. And Nathan, I'm curious about that personal use case now, so might be following up with you post event on that one. Cool. So that's kind of, we're going to end the content generation conversation there. If you do have questions, I've seen some other good use cases in the chat. And as a reminder, if you do have questions, insert those in the chat and we'll address those. But let's talk strategy. Juan, you mentioned Binder, 600 employees, probably the most enterprise business here. I'm I'm curious to know how you have started to use AI to build SEO strategy, or how AI has impacted what you're doing from an SEO strategy perspective.
Well, I'm really glad you asked, because AI has been really fundamental to a lot of the product strategy decisions we've made over the last year and a bit, and it's going to be for the foreseeable future too. I think at Binder, we really position ourselves, and the way we work with customers on the whole create, manage, and distribute model. And I think that we've spoken about create now. Like, I think it's pretty well documented how AI can play a role in the creation component, but I think you guys have already mentioned it in terms of workflows and all that kind of stuff. And I'm so glad that we're on the same page, because when we were getting into this room, I was really thinking about, like the best way that AI can support SEO strategy beyond the writing, if you think about what SEO fundamentally is. And I think one particular use case that I can think of is that if you think about Google's core March update is just rolled out. There's huge rumors about how it's going to be clamping down, particularly on AI and low value content, which, let's be honest, is really rife out there at the moment. So I think if you go back to the fundamentals of good content for Google, it'll be about really meaty pieces of content that are really well fleshed out, really well researched. And I think a very important component of that is often visuals. So you need to visually represent something. Google's become very good at understanding when you're visually communicating something versus in text. And I think that's where something like, our product and our AI capabilities have become really, really helpful, in that you can go to a single source of truth. You can grab the content that you need. You can find it using really natural language that you would use everyday terms to try and get your hands on, and then surface it. And again, it's all about that speed to market. It's about putting it in the right hands. It's about sizing it correctly. It's about getting it onto the website as quickly as possible. And that's really where I think that, at least from a Binder point of view and how we operate from an SEO point of view, has been really game changing when you think about AI beyond generative. And that's why I said I'm really glad that we're going down the software route, because I think that's where it's at.
Stephen, MarketMuse is SEO strategy is sort of what you do, right? And so curious your perspective on how marketers should be leveraging the technology, either with MarketMuse or even without MarketMuse outside of it.
Yeah, so I mean, there are a number of ways you can do that. Some easier than others. You can still cobble together systems that will help you do it with the help of AI, or you can look for, platform-specific ones like ours that are really focused on that aspect. And we'll talk, I think what's even going to be more interesting is when we look at the future of AI, and we talk more about that, because still right now we're in the early stages, right? Right now, it's essentially, we're looking at, hey, AI, I'm going to give you a topic. Give me a single page on that. And, in the future, we're going to be moving more towards like, hey, you know what? I want to write a cluster of content, right? I want to write a cluster of content about this specific topic. You go ahead, tell me what I already got on that topic, right? What I should improve, what I should write about, and why. Because really, all content strategy is really, if we can just simplify it into a nutshell, is, what content should I write and why should I write it? Right? We need to know those two things is an important part of a content strategy, whether or not that content strategy is focused on search or otherwise, right? Because we could apply content strategy to something that's much more broad. But in terms of, of an SEO, from an SEO perspective, I think one of the most important things is understanding already what content you have on the site for that's addressing a specific topic. And, in the old days, what we would do is we would do simple string matching, right? If I want to write a post, I don't know, about leading a great webinar, for example, right? My software, or, maybe I'd be using keyword research software or something like that. And we'd just be doing simple searches, string matching, right? How to lead a great webinar. And so we would find any content or any pages on our site that had that lexical string matching. And now we're able, with the help of AI, we're actually able to go beyond that, right? And we're able to find semantically related content or pages that might talk about that without having to specifically mention how to lead a great webinar in the content. And so that's super helpful now, right? Because the thing is once you get beyond a couple of hundred pages, it starts getting hard to keep track of all the content that you have, no matter what you do behind the scenes to keep things organized. I'd love to find a platform that would do that, but to date, I haven't found one. And so, but through the help of AI, we don't have to worry about that as much anymore, right? Because we can get that to help us. And that's in fact one of the things that I do on our platform. I use that to help me when I'm thinking about creating a specific piece of content. The thing that I do is I'm always thinking about clusters of content, because 5-6 years ago, we were in that environment where you could just write a page and rank, right? Pretty much anything, unless you tried to talk about search engine optimization. But beyond that, it was, for the most part, we could say, yeah, that was it. But that's no longer that case, right? It's really, really tough to be able to rank for anything unless you have enough supporting content. And so then the question becomes, well, first of all, what supporting content do I have? And, how hard is it going to be for me to end up executing on a plan? So it's not just enough. It's not just good enough to say, hey, and because you could do this, right? You could get any large language model to say, hey, you know what? Tell me some pages I should write. I want to write about how to lead a great webinar. Tell me what pages I should create. And it will give you a list of pages, right? And for most people on the first pass, that would look pretty good. But the challenge there is it does not look at your website, doesn't tell you what pages that you already have surrounding that. It doesn't even give you an idea of how much content you should be creating or to what extent you have to update those existing pages. So there's a whole lot of context that's missing, right? And no matter how well you develop that prompt, it's still going to be missing out on certain critical factors to let you know about, for example, like the quality of your content, right? What are you missing even at a page level when you're talking about a specific topic, right? You may have 10 pages on your site, right, about how to lead a great webinar, but they may be missing a key piece of information right site-wide. And those are the sorts of things we want to be able to use AI to help us with, right? Getting down to that nitty-gritty of that content analysis so that we can make those pieces of content better, right? Not just pushing out reams of content, because as this recent Google update is showing us, that's not the way to go.
Right. Yeah, Stephen, you mentioned something there at the top that you put it more delicately than I sometimes do when I'm talking to marketers. AI is still garbage in, garbage out, I think.
Yeah.
The power, it's so powerful that we maybe too often are just arbitrarily, inserting prompts, or we're just saying, oh, we're experts, so give me X about Y. And really there's so much, it's going to be as powerful as the prompt that you provide it. And I think sometimes we skip that step that actually goes into building a really good prompt. So I love that perspective. Nathan, I know you've been seeing some success. Oh, Juan, looks like you wanted to maybe double down or maybe disagree with that.
No. Like, I absolutely wanted to agree with it. And I think that we often forget that the process of finding information in an index of other information is everywhere. Like, it's in the App Store. App SEO has been something that's been around for ages. And if you think about something like some sort of index, and I so agree with you about, it's all about the prompts that you put in with the content you get out. So if you think in the future about some sort of repository of all the prompts that could exist that would give you good SEO content, I think that in of itself will become something that people want to search for. So you can imagine that there's an index of the best prompts out there and how people are manipulating to get their prompt seen for some sort of visibility. So I think that it's really like the fundamentals of SEO and how we search for information is really, really critical. And I think like AI is going to lead to a whole lot of new applications of search, basically.
Absolutely agree. We'll get to that future state because I am fascinated by it, even learning a lot, talking to other marketers this week. Nathan, I'm going to hype you up. I've been seeing you've seen some really great results in your own SEO efforts with Copy AI here recently. What's been driving that for you?
Yeah, great question. Great question. No, there's a few factors here, and I wanted to be really clear about this. There's a few factors here. We're in an interesting position in 2024 because in 2023, it's not that we were a different product, but we were definitely a different product. We were going to a whole different thing. And so we had an excellent SEO. Jonathan, Zach Harris was our SEO in 2023, gave us a really strong base. 2022 and 2023 gave us a very strong base and foundation. So now I have this like really strong domain authority to play with, and our domain ranking is very high. So the problem is, though, that we're shifting away from like a B2C market to B2B, very much enterprise focused, specifically in sales. And we didn't have a lot of content on the site. So right now, we just picked up our posting cadence, but around a very targeted niche around AI and sales. AI Sales OS is the product that we're doing now for B2B. And so the dilemma that I'm facing right now is, how do I keep the bread and butter of, we've got all this really cool traffic. I don't want to see that go because I'm greedy. But then also getting the content that we need for our B2B audience, who might not care about an intro to customer acquisition cost thing. They're just way further down the funnel. They need different information. So how do we do that? One of the fun things, we'll talk about how we prepare some of that strategy. I had a fun brainstorming session with our CMO yesterday. But one of the biggest things that we're doing is changing the types of content that we have. So Juan talking about like visual content, we said, hey, why aren't we doing like doubling down on more video conversations? And now, instead of having one writer go away into a dark hole for 6 hours and arrive with a blog post, why wouldn't like someone like me just come up with interview questions for someone like Kyle, who's an expert on a topic? We'll sit down, we'll structure that conversation in video format, and then we can take the transcript and we can get a great first draft of a blog post from that. But then we can attach the video to it. So if people want to watch, they're going to get the same information. And then the transcript's going to do a great text recap, which is what AI is fantastic at anyways. But what we found with doing that approach with that type of content is, once we get that first blog post, we can usually optimize it to rank, as long as we did keyword research before and we made sure there was an opportunity there. But the blog post actually comes out in the speaker's voice. We've noticed when I interview Kyle, it's different than when I interview Chris, and it's different than when I interview our founder, our different founders. The reason being, the guardrails we're setting for it is not the internet. It's just that transcript. Go through this transcript and pull out the human insights. That got me really excited, because for a lot of content marketers, they're kind of aware that most thought leadership has been written by a guy on Fiverr anyway. So it's not always, like, the problem hasn't always been with AI. The problem with quality has always just been with decisions being made in a room somewhere. So yeah, for us, we are switching our strategy to be, we are seeing though that cadence go up. So even though none of the posts that I wrote in February, that's not true, excuse me, we are seeing them rank. The bigger impact though is we're seeing the site score, health score go up. We're seeing organic traffic continue to go up. We're seeing demos getting booked from all that. I'm calling it AI driven content, because it's about 75% AI, 25% human taken across the finish line. And it's doing what we want it to do. So I'm excited about it. But again, and I can't stress this enough, what we don't do is create an article and just hit publish and it's done. That I cannot emphasize that enough. I will be annoying with that today. So
we'll be sure you get to mention that at least one or two more times throughout the rest of the event. Yeah.
Good.
It's interesting. You mentioned like kind of using video to create a transcript, to create written content, and one, like, you know, indexing indexes and indexing prompts. It's AI like makes this like stackability of different things so much more efficient than it's been in the past. Cool. Before we move on into the future, I want to just rapid fire here from all three of you. You all are experts, but for somebody who's maybe just starting to dip their toe into the SEO and using AI for SEO world, what's the one tip? Where should they start? What should they do to get started down that path? I'll let you fight over the order we go this time.
Would you repeat the question one more time? When you called me an expert, it threw me for a loop and I had to recalibrate.
What's the one tip you all would give somebody who's maybe watching today's content or reading today's content to get started down the using AI to build SEO strategy process? One tip or trick.
I'll give you probably the easiest thing to do, and you don't need any specific platform to do this other than some sort of large language model. And it really does start at that beginning of helping you understand your ideal customer profile. And there's a couple of things you can do. If you have like a lot of conversations already with customers, one way that you can use AI, and there are some, there's some software that, lots of software that does this already, and sometimes it's built into platforms, is actually analyzing those, those conversations to extract all of those things to understand those pain points. So that's one way to do it. I have seen actually even prompts like for ChatGPT that you can use, to help you pull out that data as well. And again, coming back to something I said earlier, if you don't have enough data and you have maybe an idea of who, because you're early in your product development, if we're talking SaaS maybe, or any sort of business, early stage of a business, and you really don't have enough of that data, you can mine chat GPT or any LLM for that. Just say, hey, you know what? This is, this is what I'm thinking that my prospective customer is. Tell me what could be some of those pain points. And that can help you, and that some of those may resonate, some of those may, it'll give you a better understanding, right, of where to start. Because the whole point is if you're going to create content, you need to create content, at least in my opinion, that's going to address problems of your target audience, right? Because, we're not writing Stephen King novels here, right? We're creating content for a specific practical purpose.
I love that analyzing customer conversations use case. I think that's one I'm going to take back to our team.
Yeah, I unmuted myself too. I mean, I know you wanted us to disagree if we could, but I could not agree more. Like the ability of Gen AI to be able to summarize meetings and summarize consumer insights is really, really impressive. But I think that the temptation with any sort of new technology when it comes to marketing would often be to boil the ocean, to use a really annoying like SaaS phrase. But I think the best place to start would be to break off a really simple content track, as I would call it. So that could be emails, that could be meta tags, that could be something like that, and really getting very good at training the AI to write how you need it to be, getting it implemented, getting the process waxed, building the workflows that you need to be able to implement this process at scale, and then starting on the next thing. So I think that's really where a lot of the times there can be a lot of inertia, because you are like, wow, this is so game changing, I just got to get stuck in everywhere, when that really just slows you down. So I think it's really about where can we focus. I also like the idea of the content repurposing. If you've got content that needs to be, you maybe got a thought leadership post that you actually want to rank, by adding some additional ChatGPT content to it. I think that's also a really good idea, because the whole mantra we've spoken about here is that it was created by humans. It's got that whole human edge to it. Excuse me. So then how do we just add the ChatGPT to really get it over the line? So I think that's really where I am on those points.
Yeah, I was just dropping in the chat. We've seen several of our customers do that, re-optimize basically their previous content using AI, and it works. So I love going back to the well there. Nathan, what would you recommend as a tip or trick to get started?
Stephen said something earlier that I really liked about why are we writing this? Why are we writing it? It should have a purpose. Why? What's the point? I would approach the same thing with your strategies with AI. Why am I automating this thing? And the reason I say that is I noticed in myself, this was probably last summer. I was using Gen AI, I was using Copy AI to automate tasks. So I need a LinkedIn post, help me get this LinkedIn post. I need a blog, help me get this blog. The only thing that did was make me a faster task rabbit, and it increased the expectations of my output. It did not give me more time back. It did not reduce my stress. It just made me feel like I had more weight on my shoulders. When I took a deep breath and I was like, oh, okay, this is I need to automate processes. I need to automate my brainstorming so I can batch all of April's content ideas. Then I need to figure out how I can batch the first draft of these outlines before I send them to a human to get touched up. How can I use AI? How can I leverage AI to automate the process, not just the task, so that I don't task rabbit myself to death? That was what I've really been focused on the past few months. And happy to say, I'm an early riser. I usually start at 5. The first 2 hours of the morning, no one's awake, no one's bugging me, and I get 8 hours of work done in those 2 hours. But I do that specifically because after 3 o'clock, I got 2 kids. I got a 5 and a 7-year-old, and they deserve all of my time before bed. So I don't want to carry all this stress about, I need to generate 5 more LinkedIn posts, and it's 5 o'clock on a Tuesday night, and I got to go do that because I can do that. And now I've shown my boss I can do that. And so I have to go do that every day now. That's a trap that I really do think a lot of marketers will get themselves in if they're just thinking about AI to automate a task, not a process. So
that's really powerful. I love the the reality of that and the balancing the work and making sure that you're not just giving yourself more work by using AI. That's really good.
Probably going to get fired for saying I'm done at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but that's fine.
We won't send this recording to your boss. So we'll make sure
we're good. Yeah, we're good. I got tons more to talk about then. Great.
Well, cool. So let's shift to the future state. And this absolutely fascinates me. I think so much technology, when we talk future, we're talking like years in advance. I think AI is obviously changing so fast. Like, next week could look different. Next month could look very different. And obviously 3, 5, 10 years from now is going to look very, very different. I've been out here this week talking to, I would say, other people at this event who are, I would describe as like technology early adopters. I've learned things about tools like Perplexity, browsers, different browsers and different search engines that people are using that kind of aggregate different search engines, kind of back to the indexing point that you made, Juan. And I was like, they're thinking about how their brand will rank and show up in some of those different search engines that aren't just Google, which is crazy to think about. So I think there's so many directions to go here for the future of AI and SEO. But how are you all future proofing your current strategy and staying up to date on what's coming down the pipeline as it pertains to AI and SEO?
That is a big question, Jonathan. And you know what? You've hit upon so many things, and you may not have even realized it. So I'm just going to draw a few of those out and add some color to that as well. One of the things is, a lot of us are thinking about, and this scares a lot of people, is everybody's thinking about SGE, right? The search generative experience from Google. So that's one thing that's going to come into play, right? And everybody's worried because that's going to definitely change how you approach content. I really think that your strategy is going to have to move away from that keyword orientation, and we're going to have to think a lot more semantically. But there's something else too that you were mentioning, and in fact, Nathan brought this up as well, and I'm doing it too. Is that we're not always using Google to search anymore? Okay, right? And so I understand that Google is still the dominant player for search engines. But what I question is, and this is just, again, my personal belief, I believe that traffic to search engines is declining because there's alternatives. And I know from my personal experience, one of the things I even do now is, for example, I'm in the market for a sailboat, used sailboat. I'm going to a place called, I used to go to Google, now I go to sailboatdata.com. Because it has everything I need there, and I don't have to worry about being having to search through all sorts of Reddit results and God knows what that's coming up in the search engine results. So that's one thing. So I'm going to different sites that are actually purpose specific there. But the other thing too is, I'm using Perplexity, right? I'm using other LLM based models as well to find out information. And it's just become natural now. For example, after Christmas, we did another, for my other relatives, we had a second Christmas party. And one of the things I was doing is I was in the middle of creating gravy. And I wanted to, I was torn between, do I add some red wine to this gravy or do I add some Pinot de Charan? Pinot de Charan is like it's a type of cognac, right? It's not quite a cognac. It's in between a cognac and a wine. And so I didn't want to go and look on Google because I know what I'm going to get. Not great stuff. I ended up asking a large language model, and it was wonderful. It gave me this nuanced answer on the difference in how it affect the flavor profile. And it gave me everything I needed. And so here's the thing too, is that we're going to have to think beyond search engine optimization. We're going to have to think about, well, how do I optimize my content, or how do I create a content strategy so that I'm going to appear in these large language model answers? I don't know what we're going to call that. LLMO for large language model optimization. I don't know, but this is something that we're going to have to think about as well, right? And the other thing too, I'm going to say is this. Right now, we're still at the stage that, we're thinking, okay, I got a keyword. I want to write a piece of content around. I'm going to use software, AI software to help me do that. We're very close to being at the stage where we can actually go beyond that. We're going to have software where we can say, hey, you know what? I want to write about this. Tell me what I got on my site. Help me build out that cluster. Tell me not only what I got to write, what do I have, what do I got to improve, and why, right? Don't just spit out and give me a title, right? Anybody can do that. Tell me where this fit in the funnel. Give me some background on why I should create this content so that that human, of course, is going to be the final decision maker as to what they're going to be writing, what content they want to create. And of course, at the same time, they're going to have to give constraints to say, hey, you know what? I am a SaaS company, right? So my content strategy is going to be different than one that's an e-commerce, let's say, right? Or a publisher. They're going to have different ways of creating content strategy. And so those things are going to have to come into play as well. And they're going to be able to, right? We're very, very close to that stage now. I think 2024, we'll be seeing a lot more of that happening and software coming out.
Steven, was the gravy delicious?
It was.
That's good. That's good. And I love LLMO mainly because we could pronounce that Elmo, and I think we could all have some fun with that. Juan, Nathan, how are you guys thinking about all of these changes? Some of what Steven just said. What's your reaction to where we're going?
Yeah, I think much like Steven, my brain goes in so many different directions that I think it's pretty hard to articulate. But I think one of the fundamentals that we really encourage our more enterprise level customers that we work with is to really make sure that the decisions you are making as far as MarTech is concerned is that you're not like chasing shiny objects that do specific bitty things. Rather kind of like focus on a core set of things that do things really well and then integrate with the rest. Like those integrations will allow you to create like one really strategic repository that you can, use to execute your marketing and your content experiences much more effectively rather than chasing after everything. Because I think just like my mind is blown by what AI is and what it can be, I think that's going to come to fruition in MarTech. It already is. In 2023, there was significantly, I think 78% of the MarTech vendors that hit the market were driven by generative AI. So you can only imagine that that's really going to compound. So I think in a few years' time, there's going to be so many AI tools that are doing so many different things that I think it's really important to now make the decision that you're going to double down on a few strategic tools that really are the nexus around which you build the rest of your MarTech. And those integrations and integratability are really, really, really critical. I mean, if you had to give me a crystal ball though, and ask me how SEO is going to look in a few years' time, I think the reason why Google, in my opinion, Google is slow to accept AI and they are still trying to control it. They're still trying to be like, no, we're going to clamp down on this low quality content. You're going to use our AI to do whatever you need to do, but you're not going to, we don't want your trashy content in Google that's written by generative AI. So I think they are probably going to lose market share as a result of that. And I think people are going to really go full circle to things that are more fundamental, that they know and trust are going to have the information. You're not going to have to go through 10 pages to find what you're looking for anymore. So I do think that Google is in trouble. I think they're going to have to figure out how they're going to embrace AI, and they're going to have to, realize that it's something that is now part of our tool set as humans and as marketers, and they just really have to embrace that.
Juan, I love how similar that advice was to kind of the same advice you gave earlier around start with a single use case and then spread from there, but really nail that first use case and grow. I think that's because you're right. It's almost distracting how much is possible and how much is happening with AI. Nathan, what's your perspective on where we're going with all of this?
Oh, it's great question. I've been definitely living day by day mode until this question came up. So let me expand this out. Genuinely, search habits are going to have to change, like we've been talking about. They're just changing. They just have to. So I'll give you we did an SEO strategy session yesterday. We sat down to plan content for April, and we have a theme for the month. And we knew we needed about 30 posts that we want to cover on this theme in that month. So we sat down and we used chat, the CMO and I, to brainstorm. And we said, hey, we know we're going to need 30, so give us 60, just ideas and titles. And then it went through and we're like, this is good. We could change this. And we went through each one hand by hand. And then after that, I took it and I said, hey, for each of these titles, we know that these are the titles that we're going to do. Give me 5 keywords that might make sense. Okay, cool. Then I could take that data and run it into a tool like Ahrefs to say, does anything have potential here? And now I can assign keywords with opportunities. Then I can take that, run it against my sitemap to see if we have any content that's there. So do we need net new or do we need a refresh? What are we doing here? We got through April and May's content in about 45 minutes, the content plan.
Wow.
It's too easy to do now for it to remain that way forever. It's just going to have to change. That's probably a short-term strategy. It's probably going to work in 2024. It's going to be great. Probably not going to go much after that. That's why I do think videos, I think people moving forward, I think SEO is going to be more YouTube focused than it is Google focused. And I think people are going to crave videos much, much more that they can tell weren't made by Sora or AI. And I think what you can do in those video descriptions is get really good, concise and clear text-based recaps that people can then go bookmark if they want. That's my assumption. I don't know if it's correct. I'm not putting all my money on that line, but I think that's where it's headed. And so that's why we're moving into more audio visual types of content and viewing the rankable text as the supplementary stuff rather than where we're putting all of our budget, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that does make sense. That's really powerful. I think video is top of mind. And I know, Nathan, you've mentioned that several times. I think a lot of marketers are figuring out how to lean in to video capabilities. So we've got a few minutes here, and I want to give the audience some time back at the end of the event. Maybe let's round robin here. Maybe Stephen, I'll start with you. Could you each share maybe one resource that you're using to stay up to date on AI and SEO? And then share a little bit about how, if the audience wants to learn about your business, how and where they should do that.
Actually, really, my source now is, is everybody familiar with Archive? ARXIV. That is a resource for PDFs. And basically, this is a resource for research. There's all sorts of research, but you can find wonderful research on AI there. That's my preferential place to go. A lot of the stuff that you'll see if you just do Google searches is very superficial. And so I'm actually more interested in the technology itself, understanding how some of these things are getting created and what are some of those mechanisms of how that's done. So, and because of the business that MarketMuse is in, I just find that that's more valuable for me myself. So, it's probably much too in the weeds for most of the listeners to do, but that's just, where I'm at right now. And you know what? You can always reach out to MarketMuse if you want to learn more at our site, or we're on LinkedIn, or myself too, Stephen Jeske. I am on LinkedIn as well.
I think, as you probably get a sense, I'm quite a fundamental marketer. I believe in a couple of fundamentals of marketing. I believe in a couple of fundamentals of search, of digital. And as a result, I've learned a long time ago that digital is so fast evolving that if you chase every new shiny release of AI, I think you would basically be experimenting and not really getting any work done. So to be honest, I'm not a great reader of these kinds of trends. It's not something I stay up to date with. It's more about experimentation. It's more about actually playing with it as I know the capabilities arise. And obviously being in a tech business, we are kept up to speed with how things are going. So yeah. And then in terms of reaching out, you can also reach out to me on LinkedIn. Juan Costel. I'm on LinkedIn, fairly active there too. If you'd like to chat about, DAM or anything else that I've mentioned today, you feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. I think that'll probably be the easiest, or you can hit us up on binder.com.
Right. I'm so spoiled and lucky that I just work with really smart engineers with a Slack channel, and they nerd out for me and just post stuff and I go check it out, which is neat. Juan, I'm with you. I'm much more use it every day to see what's happening, play with different models, see what gets me better output and what doesn't. That's I'm more of a in the trenches in that way. Not because I don't enjoy reading or the podcast. There's just so much of life to think about, and it's, it's hard to. I like to take breaks mentally from that kind of thing so I can come back refreshed. I'm also not the most technically minded person, so I do consider myself advanced in terms of using AI for content marketing, but in terms of like the technical stuff, I almost have no interest in learning the mechanics of how these language models work. Look, to prepare for our offsite, just to have something to talk about, I just watched Terminator, and I was like, okay, that'll give me enough to talk about with the software engineers. That's fine. We're good. But in terms of which model is best for accomplishing X or Y task or process, that really is important for me to stay up to date. And I found that my needs are so personalized. I assume everyone listening's needs would be so personalized that you almost just have to roll up your sleeves, get in there and start playing with it. So tons of tools, no shortage. This will be my little spiel for Copy AI. Obviously, we're a Gen AI tool. Again, I was saying we do have the chat feature, which is awesome, but then workflows to help automate processes and do those tasks and operations in bulk, much larger in bulk. It's also model agnostic is my last little pitch. So it's not just like OpenAI's GPT-4. We also have Anthropic's Claude. So I like that because there's no downtimes. You can play and test the different models to see what gets best for the exact thing that you want. So yeah, Copy AI. That's literally the name is the website. So go check that out. You can find me on LinkedIn if you want to bug me without selling me stuff. It would be great. And then, yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. Nathan Likes Writing, I think is my handle. So.
Love that. Well, thank you to all three of you for joining us. This has been a really enlightening conversation. I've got a notebook page full of notes now. I've learned a lot. I trust our audience has learned a lot. I think we'll be sure to kind of pull out some of the highlights from this and share that with the audience and beyond as well. So thank you to the three of you for joining us today. Thank you for everyone who joined the event today, and for everyone who's listening on demand. I think this is going to continue to evolve. So we'll continue this conversation beyond just this event, but we thank you for taking the time today. And until next time, we'll see you soon. Thank you.